Hi. Today we're going to talk about analyzing data and specifically how to get going. I was meeting with one of my doctoral students recently and she said, I'm stuck. She said, I've done all my interviews and I'm almost done transcribing. I have one more interview to transcribe. And she said, I don't know how to begin. And I was looking in your textbooks, and the textbooks give you a lot of information about how to analyze data. But they really don't have much about how to get started. And so, and I think this is a common problem that students have, is you're done with your data collection and you are, overwhelmed with the amount of data you have, and you sort of don't even know where to begin, what to do to start. And so I was giving Christine some good concrete suggestions for how to start, and I thought you people need to know this too. So she had multiple cases, 7 cases of Filipino women who had completed their college degrees. And here was her purpose statement. The objective of this study is to use narrative to examine the educational life histories of Filipinas who have successfully graduated from college, to explore their personal experiences throughout their educational journey from elementary school through higher education. This study will enable participants to discuss the unique challenges and benefits that they may have encountered because of their racial, ethnic, class, and gender identities in formal and informal education modes. That's a lot of words. But you can see what? It's a qualitative study. She's going to use narrative and life history. She's named who her participants are, Filipinas who have graduated from college, and she's going to talk about their whole life, from elementary school through higher education, their educational life. So Cresswell has, in terms of help for you, his data analysis spiral, which is on page 183. And Merriam, on page 173, says, this involves coding, a term that has unfortunately further mystified the already mysterious process of data analysis. And I love that. I thought, thank you very much, Sharon Merriam, for telling us that the process is mysterious and the term coding doesn't help, because I think that is so true. Students often go, coding? What am I supposed to do now? How do I begin? And that, of course, was what Christine was asking me. And I told her, I said, it's sort of like when you send your luggage through the X-ray machine at an airport, and you have no idea what's happening in that dark space, and you don't know what's going to come out the other end. And that is exactly how you are feeling about your data. I don't know what this coding involves, and I don't know how it's going to look when it comes out the other end, and I feel like I'm just sending my data into some dark, mysterious space. So we're going to talk about where to start when you have all that data. And the first thing I would suggest you do is to make lists. Everybody can make a list, right? You make grocery lists, you make to-do lists. So I told her, we'll take each case and just make a list of what you heard or what you found in that particular case. And in this case, you would do that for her 7 cases. And I told her I did this for my dissertation, and that it was very useful to, I was like, what did I find? I don't know what I found. And of course, you will have had to have read all of the transcripts and maybe highlighted things. But if you really don't know how to begin to code, then I would say just step back and list what it is you think you heard or read in a particular transcript. And then that helps you. Now, in her case then, she had 7 of these, right? Because she had 7 cases. So then you want to look not only at what is going on in each case, but what do you see going on across cases? And that is, for case study, that's individual case analysis and across case analysis. And you need to do both. You need to say what's going on here with this person, and then what's going on across these cases. When do I find similarities? when I look across the cases. So you're supposed to be finding these themes, and again, themes, what are themes? And Merriam says use lists on page 190 in Exhibit 8.3. If you look at that, you'll see that she's recommending that lists be used. And then charts are also very helpful. And one of the reasons that both lists and charts are helpful is because you're doing what Miles and Huberman call data reduction. You end up with a ton of data, hours and hours of transcripts, and you cannot use it all. And some of it you don't want to use. If they started talking about their pet cat or whatever, people get off topic, you know, so you don't want to use all of that, but you have to reduce it. And two ways to reduce it are through lists or through charts. And you'll see the chart that she did, which I think is really helpful to look at her data. So one of the things you can do then with the list, once I get these lists, I need to figure out how to organize the elements of the list. And what I would suggest you do is to make a matrix. Or, no, I'm sorry. In this case, we're going to do concept mapping. So you want to put your central question or idea in the middle, and then you want to put the items on the list around the outside, and you may decide, oh, these two really go together, or this one has 3. And then you want to organize those, and you can look and say, oh, well, of course these go together, but also maybe these go together. And you can begin to organize the things on your list. Now what I would suggest you do is put all the items on the list on sticky notes. And then you can move these around, because once you get them either in the list or into your concept map, you want to have some flexibility. You want to be able to look at those and go, oh, you know what, this one doesn't fit at all, or these two need to be with these two, or whatever. And you can see that I just drew it. But sometimes it's much better if you can take these two stickies and put them together over here and say that's a theme, those two together. And then you have 2 or 3 more stickies down here, and that's a theme, and you can cluster them and begin to think about the themes in your study. And then you may go, no, this goes over here. You know, if you've got them on stickies on either a piece of paper or on the wall, then you have that flexibility to move them around and try to make sense of your data. So I've done that with a lot of actually faculty who are trying to organize their research and write an article, as well as with students. And they report that it's very helpful because it makes the process more fluid and it makes you more adaptable in your thinking. At the same time that just writing all the elements on the stickies is a good brainstorming activity for you. The other thing you can do, yeah, Cresswell does on page 187 and Merriam does on page 184. She lists 3 sources, 3 different people who recommend this. And it's called a matrix. It's actually sort of a table. I mean, I use the table function in Word when I do this. And what you do is you could put Joe and Mary and George and Jane and Elma on the top, or you could list them down the side, either one. And then you put the elements of your study: anger, depression. This is a happy study, isn't it? I guess we should get something good in there, so it might be euphoria and feeling lost. You know, whatever it is that you're finding in your interviews, then you go through and you say, okay, was Joe angry? Yeah, he was. Did he feel some euphoria? Yeah, he did. And did he feel lost? Yes. Mary was not angry, but she was depressed. And then sometimes she would feel lost. And so you can go through and you can see just put some more checks in here so you get the idea. Oh, here, look at 3 of the people, or this is a theme, or this is a theme, however many people express that particular element or theme that you found. And then the other thing that I often do is put quotes in here. Can't spell very well, but anyway, that says quote. So you can have not only that Joe was angry, but here's what he said about it. When I first went to school, I was really angry. And here's the reason why, or whatever. So you can expand this and include quotes for each one of these elements. And again, as you can see, this is a data reduction technique because you're reducing everything down to the point where you can see it all on one chart. And then you might say, oh, you know what, there's only, let's see, one person who said they were angry. So maybe that isn't a theme. Maybe I don't want to use that, And so it helps you to see, or, wow, look at this. A bunch of people were euphoric. And here's what they said. And so that looks like it might be everyone experienced euphoria. Then you, for sure, you would want to include that. So I always recommend that you start with that too, to make a matrix of your work that helps you get a handle on the whole thing. So you're like, what's going on in this study? And you can get a sense of it through looking at all of your participants together. So you want to look, as I said, on what participants say that runs across their cases or interviews. Are these each a case? But also the other thing, if you're feeling lost and you don't know what to do, look at your research questions. What did you ask? What did she ask at the beginning? Okay, she wanted their personal experiences, their educational journey from elementary school through high school. So, okay, I got to make sure I got that in here, that I didn't end up talking only about what happened to them in college or whatever. And so that gives you a clue. You have to answer those research questions, so be sure to do that. But also a theoretical frame. What is your theoretical frame? And remember that the theoretical frame is like a looking glass lens. You want to look through that frame at your data. Okay, in her case, she's using critical race theory as her theoretical frame. And the place that you see that in here is she's talking about racial, ethnic, class, and gender identities in formal and informal modes of education. So that's why those words are in there. Because she's using her theoretical frame to look at this data. And that frame says what matters here is racial identity, ethnic identity, class identity, and gender identity. Okay? So she's got to be sure then to look at what do they say about their racial or ethnic identity. Do they talk about class? Were they rich? Were they poor? And also gender. What do they say about being a woman in her case? Because that's what she's got, is Filipinas, which are women. Okay? Now, Miriam says on 185 that there's a danger in borrowing classification schemes, and I would absolutely agree. I've had students who picked a narrower frame than critical race is huge. So it's pretty amorphous and it has certain important elements, but sometimes you pick a theoretical frame where the person said this, this, and this are part of the frame. So you go, oh, this George's theory says that if we look at Filipinas, for instance, you're going to see this, 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 and this. Well, what if your work doesn't match George's frame? What if you find, oh, wow, these people's grandmothers were really important to them, and all the stuff in the frame is not about that? Is that bad? No, that's good. That means you've just added to the theory. You found something new that George didn't find. That's good. But if you only look through your frame and you don't listen carefully to your participants, you might miss that they talk about their grandmothers all the time. And you don't want that to happen. So it's a delicate balance between using this frame, whatever it is, as a guide, and also listening for new information. Things that maybe previous scholars didn't know or realize or hear in their work. And that's really important because you want to hear those new elements. So you need a frame to help guide you, but you don't want to be stuck in the frame. You want to be able to hear what else is outside of the frame. That might be important. So listen to your participants. And what I said is, if you stay with the frame too closely, you hinder the generation of new categories. These outside sources are your guides, but your participants are the experts. They're the experts because they've lived it, and you're wanting to know, what was that like for you? So you want to be sure to hear what it is they're saying clearly and not let this get in the way. Now, poor Christine, she had writer's block. And this is often true for students. It's like, fear of the blank page. There you are looking at this blank page and thinking, I have to write my dissertation, I have to write my dissertation. And it's huge and you don't know how and you're feeling lost, and what are you going to do? Well, Miriam calls this on page 238, preparing to write. And she says there's no substitute for just plunging in and writing, but I think sometimes students can't do that unless you just write, help, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm doing, which you can do. And sometimes that's very helpful to just start with a free write. I had a friend who did that in graduate school. She couldn't start, I mean, when she sat down and looked at the blank page to think, now I'm writing my dissertation, just freaked her out, you know? I mean, it was too scary. And I always say to my students, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. One bite at a time. So you want to start small, but you may have to warm up by saying, I don't know if I can do this. This is just really too hard, blah, blah, blah. I know I can write one paragraph on what George said about this. Okay, well then we'll just start with that. And what you do is you start free writing about what it is you're feeling and thinking, and then you segue into the dissertation, into that academic writing from the personal writing. And that works well. I knew someone that had to do that every time she sat down to write on her dissertation. She just had to start with a little bit of, here's where I am. So the plunging in and doing it is good if you can do that. I knew a novelist from Australia who called it bum glue. He said you glue your bum to the chair and you write. So some people can do that, but if you have fear of the blank page, free write before you begin each session. It will warm you up and get you thinking about the work before you begin the academic writing. And it helps avoid panic, or at least it helps you deal with the panic that you may be feeling. Now then another thing that I do is I use a modular approach when I write, so that I don't have the whole elephant to write at once. You know, I'm just going to write the leg or the tail or whatever. So I say, all right, today I'm going to write this section of the paper, or this section of the chapter that I'm trying to write, and I just do that piece. And that also is a helpful way. You're taking those little bites out of this big elephant rather than to do the whole thing at once. Now I want to talk for a minute about computer and qualitative data analysis programs, because both Cresswell and Merriam talk about this. And what Merriam says is the program won't analyze the data for you. I often find that students really want to use a qualitative data analysis program, and it's because they're thinking, I don't know how to do this and the program will help me. And then what happens is once they get to the point where they have to analyze the data, they got to learn this new program and they don't have time. And so there's a steep learning curve, and they find that it doesn't really help them much to have this computer program. It was a crutch that they then discover they don't need. If you're really computer savvy, then hey, that might be great. something that would really be useful to you. So she says it doesn't analyze the data for you, and it often has a steep learning curve. It can be costly. They cost quite a bit of money. But they do offer organized filing systems that can be very useful. They require that you look closely at your data. They require a close examination of the data. That sometimes doesn't happen unless you're in the program, using the program. And they do have a lovely concept map feature. And that was what I showed you earlier on the board, was all the circles is a concept map. And so you can do that in the programs. That's nice. Cresswell discusses the advantages and disadvantages on page 201 and 203. And he has a list of features to consider on page 210. So, good old Cresswell. He'll tell you, here's what's helpful and not helpful about data analysis programs. And then if you decide you want to buy one, look on page 210 and he'll tell you what you should consider. What do you need? So I would say have a wonderful research journey. It will end up being very satisfying, especially if you pick a topic that you care about. I always tell my students, look, you need to care about what you find. You need to be curious about what you're going to find. Because you'll need a lot of energy. This is sort of a lonely journey, and you need the energy to keep going. And I had a friend who I said, what are you writing your dissertation on? And she said, peer or something or other. And I said, well, how do you feel about that? And she said, oh, I think it's stupid and useless. And I thought, oh dear, that's not a good way to feel when you have all this work to do. So pick something that you think is really going to make a difference and that you care about, that you're curious about. And then you'll want to hear what your participants have to say. Christine is Filipina, and so she cares about what these Filipino women say. She cares about the fact that they succeeded, and she wants to know how they did that so that we can help other women succeed in their college degree. What worked for them? So that's good to have something that you really are curious about or care about to keep you going. And that would be my last piece of advice on this. But happy journey. Have a wonderful time. Thanks.